Hector Bravo, unhinged. Chaos is now in session.
Welcome back to our channels, Warriors. We are still growing. Another banger for you guys today. You guys have asked for it. You guys wanted to hear more perspective from former female correctional officers. It helps the masses and gives you a different perspective. So today we have none other than Valerie, a former correctional officer from CCWF Chowchilla. So what up, Valerie?
What's going on?
Welcome.
Thank you.
How was your drive down here?
It was long.
Any traffic or no?
No, actually, it wasn't too bad. You know, we drove up yesterday, or should I say we drove down.
Yeah.
And it wasn't bad at all. It was nice.
Did it rain on your guys' way down or no?
No, but I mean, as soon as we hit San Diego, the temperature was just big, huge difference.
Cooler?
It was, yes, a lot cooler. I mean, I'm from Central Valley. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I was like, oh my gosh.
That's why I love it here. It's freaking expensive, but maybe that's why there's so many homeless people here. The weather.
Yeah. I mean, we have that too in the Central Valley,
Do you?
you know, so I guess it's everywhere. But, you know, I mean, it's worth it. Living out here, the weather, everybody just seemed all happy.
Chill.
Chill. I'm just like, yeah, this is what I would love. But
Cool. So we'll dive right into it. What prompted you? What made you want to become a correctional officer?
Well, it goes back to my childhood. I'm from the Central Valley, and my parents, you know, they divorced, and during that divorce, they had, you know, my father, he had like a little, I would say, alcohol issue. He was in and out of jail, and, you know, I remember going to jail and visiting him, crying, you know, whenever we would leave. And then eventually he ended up getting into a lot of trouble. Well, in between that time, my mom passed away from breast cancer. So my dad, he ended up going to prison. And so I didn't have anybody, you know, I didn't have my mom, I didn't have my dad.
Wow.
So it was a really tough time for myself and for my siblings. And I just remember like thinking, well, I would like to help people,
Right.
you know, and of course, naively at that time,
Yeah.
I didn't understand the whole process. But yeah, I was just thinking I would love to help people.
How old were you during this time frame?
So my mom had passed away when I was 12, well, just before my 12th birthday. And then, like, just right after that, my dad went to prison.
Sorry to hear that. So,
Oh, thank you.
So a lot of impactful things were happening at a very young age for you.
Yes, it was. And, I mean, you know, you're there with your thoughts. You don't have, you know, how do you say, your world just comes crashing down, the world that you knew.
Literally.
You know what I mean? And then it's just like, well, okay, my dad, the only parent I have is gone. You know what I mean? So, and I went to go visit him. He was actually at Jamestown.
Okay. Was that up north? Oh, in Jamestown.
Yeah, it is up north. And they have I think the fire camp there.
Yeah.
I believe, yeah. So I want to say he did about a year. And then he came out and, you know, he was ready to go. I mean, luckily, he's a welder, professional welder. They gave him his job back, thank God. And so he did his best to raise the four of us. There's four of us.
Yeah.
And, I mean, he did an awesome job.
Were you like the oldest, the middle, the youngest?
Yeah, I'm the second to youngest.
Okay.
And then, you know, I think from losing my mom and just everything, you know, because when everything happened, I think I suppressed my feelings. But then as I went into teenagehood is when I started getting into a lot of trouble. And
you know, but that's normal though. That's common to be. Well, I mean, the human brain does not stop developing till the age of 26.
yes,
So you're gathering, you're learning.
true.
I wouldn't necessarily say you were suppressing. It's like you're trying to figure out what is going on.
Yeah, that is true. That is very true. You know, I was becoming a little rebellious because my dad, you know, I mean, he went to prison, so he knows how the world is, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And he tried to protect me and keep me home and, you know, don't let me go anywhere, stuff like that. So I started like rebelling and I started getting into, you know, a lot of trouble. I got expelled from school, you know, things like that. And to the point to where I ended up running away, you know, and then finally, you know, I got into my senses. I was like, this is not the life I want, you know?
Yeah.
And I'm like 13 years old thinking like I know it all. And I was like, no, this is not the life I want. So I go back home.
You ran away at what age?
Yeah, I was 13 years old.
That's very young.
Yeah, I mean, I was just, just being rebellious.
Right.
That's the only way I could.
Right.
So, so then, I went back home and, I talked to my dad, I apologized, and he was, happy to see me home and safe,
I bet.
Yeah, and we made plans, and I was like, Dad, I'm sorry, we made plans, because my dad, he was always about us, you know what I mean? Single dad, working long hours, and it was all about us, so he never took care of himself, so he'd have, like, holes in his socks and stuff like that, and I'm like, Dad, let's go shopping, let's go take care of you, Dad, and he's like, okay, cool, and the next day, he was gone, and he passed away from alcohol poisoning because, he had a really, what do you call it? I don't want to call him an alcoholic, but, he had to drink every day. He poured, alcohol in his cup of coffee and stuff like that. And so
I'm very familiar with alcoholism. I myself am an alcoholic, but I was curious to know why you wouldn't call him an alcoholic from your perspective.
I've never been in that predicament to where, to say that I've been like, where I've used any type of alcohol, well, maybe a little bit of alcohol, but any type of substance.
Okay.
And I just feel like it's kind of like a rude word or something like that. But it's,
I don't think it is a rude word. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I hear what you're saying.
Yeah, because I've told that to people, and they're like, well, that's not a correct word, and I'm like, I don't know what to say.
You gotta call it something, right?
Yeah,
but I hear
you're
you.
right.
That makes
and
sense.
It's like, that's my dad, and I love him, and I
Right.
don't want to offend my dad.
Perfect. No, makes total sense.
Yeah. So, but anyways, yeah. And so, that day, I made a promise to my dad. I said, Dad, I will do good, and I will do better. And that's what I did. And so, when I went into high school, I was like, that's what I want to do. I want to be a correctional officer and help people.
Did you know other correctional officers or anything of the prison system?
Well, I had some family. I have an uncle that I believe he just recently retired that was a correctional officer, but I never saw him. He was never home.
But I'm saying, like, where did you get the idea for correctional officer? Was it from visiting
I see
in
what
jail?
You're saying.
Yeah,
just because I just went back to the part of,
okay.
Remembering when he was in prison,
Okay.
and thinking like, wow, I want to help,
Okay.
families, I don't, in my head, as a child, I'm just
Right.
thinking, well, I would like to be a correction officer and help families reunite, get back together,
Yeah.
That was in my head. Naively having not any idea, I was just thinking that was,
So at what point in time did you actually apply?
I actually, I graduated high school, and then I went to, I got married right after high school, and my husband at the time, he was not okay with me being a correctional officer, just for the fact of the danger of it, just,
Watching the movies.
watching the
Yeah.
movies, getting
Dangerous.
raped possibly,
Yeah.
getting, stabbed, all this stuff, and I was like, you know what? You're right. Let me think about it. You know what I mean? And out of respect for him,
Right.
because he's my
Right.
husband. So I decided to go to college, and I was like, I'm going to be a teacher. I want to help. And I actually did work at a school as a teacher's aide, and I was just like, that's not for me.
So this whole time, were you still remaining in the same location, Central California?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then right before I graduated, I saw one of the students wearing a lanyard with her California state ID hanging, and I was like, let me just ask,
Right.
because I still had that, that itch to be a correctional officer, but, and so anyways, I asked her, and she was a OT for the substance abuse program there at CCWF. And she's like, I could give you the information if you want to be a counselor and stuff like that. And I was like, hey, why not? She goes, yeah, they're hiring.
She was just a student. She wasn't a recruiter.
She was a student.
of the class?
Yeah, she was
Okay.
trying to, move up in her career. And so I said, hey, what do I have to lose? You know, at the time, I think I don't even remember what I was working as. So then I ended up I graduated and I called and they were like, yeah, fax me your resume. And sure enough, not too long after, I became a substance abuse counselor.
Where?
There at CCWF. Yeah.
Wow. This is good. This is very good. It almost seemed like you were destined to be a CO.
Exactly, right? It was, yeah.
So, substance abuse counselor, what do you get? You get a certificate? Diploma? What do you get?
No. Well, they preferred people that had I had my AS degree.
Okay.
But yeah, I believe it was an AS degree or higher. I don't remember too much, but I do want to say it was for sure an AS degree because that's what I had. So, but I want to say they started everybody off as entry level, or I don't remember if it was depending on your education. Anyhow, I was there for about a year, and I was not relating to the inmates because I didn't have a substance abuse problem.
Hold on. You were not relating to the inmates solely because you didn't have a substance abuse problem?
Yeah, so because it's, I was a substance abuse counselor.
Right, but I mean, like, what type of was conflict arising? Was miscommunication arising?
It was so for example, they would give us a kind of like a lesson plan or some objectives, and we would have to, do a group, and I would have to talk about, like, let's say alcoholism and the effects of alcoholism and of course, when you're not drinking, right, or any addiction that you have, when you stop that, you start having all these withdrawals, right? And I would not have any clue what that even meant. I was like, I don't know anything about withdrawals, or I don't know the struggles of why not just stop drinking? Like, if you want to stop drinking, why not just stop? Like, I didn't understand that concept.
Do you understand it now?
Oh, yes. I understand it now, yes.
Okay.
But at the time, I felt like, and the inmates, they were very understanding with me.
They were like patient with, they were understood?
They were patient.
Well, that's a good thing.
Yes, and they had mentors. So a lot of the groups, the inmate mentors would kind of run. And so I would kind of guide them or facilitate, the groups. But sometimes they wanted me to run it. And I would, like I said, I was disconnected. And I just felt like, for me, I just didn't feel right continuing in a position that I didn't understand or even, I couldn't relate. So.
But did you learn anything in your studies that you could pass on to them?
Yeah, yes. Don't get me wrong. There was things that I was able to help, and there were things I was able to relate to, like life situations, like I didn't tell them.
Trauma.
Yes, exactly, stuff like that. I was able to relate, and I was able to talk to them about that. And it was cool. It was a very awesome experience, awesome people. But like I said, I just, you got to know when to be like, hey, I need to walk away. This is not working out.
So how long was that? How long did you do that for?
I want to say about a year.
You gave it a good run.
Yeah, I did. Well, no, but I stayed there. There was a woman that I was telling you, the student, she was leaving to another position. So her position was going to become available. So
the OT position?
Yeah, the OT position. So I asked, hey, can I apply for that? And they're like, oh, yeah, and sure enough, because you had to type fast and all that.
Yeah.
And I knew how to do that. So I was like, yeah. So, yeah, they put me in that position, thankfully. And
who were you working for or under, like a captain, or it was strictly?
No, it was for the substance abuse program. Yeah, it was because it was a company. I can't even remember the name of the company, but they were contracted, with the state, but everything was there at the prison. And so, and the funny thing, how I ended up becoming an officer was so we would have to go to the housing units and do like a roll call and do like, all this stuff. But the officers, they would have to like escort us sometimes or whatever. Well, the S&E there, he was like, look, this is why you need to become a correctional officer. And he's showing me his check. It's like a lot of money, right? And I'm just like.
Was his check in comparison to your check at a time a big difference?
Oh, huge difference.
I think that's one of the motivating factors that people become
COs. because I was just like, and the funny thing is that when I became the counselor, I wasn't aware that I was going to be inside the actual prison with the inmates walking amongst them. I just had this idea that they were going to bring them to this building and, and so, but, after working with them and, the inmates, they were not really that violent at that time either. So it wasn't a big issue, like, where as far as I was like, well, it's actually kind of safe here, in a sense.
How long were you in that OT position for?
I want to say about like 8 months, about there.
So approximately you had 2 years of experience working as a free staff
Yes.
prior to become a correctional officer?
Yes.
So good. I'll like piggyback off of that.
Okay.
You were not necessarily ordering inmates to do anything in your previous two positions, were you?
A little bit, yes, because they had to at that time. They were mandated. The inmates were mandated to go into the substance abuse program, but a lot of it was more like voluntary because of like as a condition to parole, stuff like that. And so they had to meet certain criteria. They had to behave a certain way, like they couldn't, like for example, if they wanted to take a day, we would go over there and we'd talk to them and then let them know, hey, if you don't show up, whatever, then we're going to write you up, stuff like that.
Okay.
But no, we not in the capacity as an officer.
As a CO, yeah.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So I want you to explain to me about the type of academy that you attended, because you mentioned it was something like college courses.
Yes. So, working there as a free staff, I got to know, some of the
bigwigs.
Yeah. And so particular, there was, at that time, there was an IST sergeant, and he had mentioned to me, hey, we're going to be having this pilot program, just give you a heads up. And they're looking in particular for those who have graduated from college and stuff like that. And I was like, oh, cool. He's like, yeah, you should apply. So, I applied, and eventually I got, selected. And everything was about on your own time. There was, they didn't pay us.
That's crazy.
Yeah, and I lived about, I want to say about 45 minutes, 30 to 45 minutes, depending on traffic, away from the college. Everything was going to happen at the college, at the Fresno City College.
That's wild.
Yeah, and so it was a big commitment because I had an 8 to 5 job, and then so class started at 6. So
6 p.m.?
Yes.
That's a long day.
And then it ended at 10, 5 days a week. And so, and at the time, I was like, well, I think this is my way in,
Yeah.
And, I talked to my husband at the time, and he was cool with it. He's like, because they said more than likely, because they need females at the CCWF, that I would end up there. So I was like, cool, done.
Right.
So yeah, I did 13 weeks in, and I had failed my my psych eval.
So you did 13 weeks of Monday through Friday, 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. after working your regular day.
Yes.
Were you exhausted?
Yes, I was. I'm not gonna say no, because I was.
Yeah.
Because especially when we had PT, and at that time, I was a gym junkie, if you will.
Yeah.
Like I was always exercising, running. That was my thing, running. So I was pretty fit, but still, it gets exhausting.
Oh, hell yeah.
Working, driving over there, and then driving back after class, and yeah, but. The crazy thing is that I failed that psych eval, and come to find out that psychologist had a prejudice against females going into the department. I don't know if it was necessarily females being officers or exactly what.
Was he a male psychologist?
Yeah, he was a male psychologist.
Was he old and white? That was just a wild guess.
You are right. And yeah, so sure enough, I had to, appeal it. And then I hired my own psychologist, and I got reevaluated. And that was, that was when they told me, hey, by the way, this is what's going on.
Yeah.
So just go ahead and do a couple tests, because over a year, you have to retest, like after a year,
Yeah.
So I had to retest, and I passed everything. And sure enough, they're like, where do you want to go? What academy you want to go to?
Yeah.
All this stuff. And I was like,
What academy?
Mm-hmm. Because at that time, there was Stockton, and then there was Galt.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Did you get your pick?
Yeah.
What did you pick?
I picked Galt.
Why?
Because I was not going to sleep because they told me, they're like, hey, just so you know, because I didn't even understand. I was like, what is Stockton? And they're like, well, you'll be living in the cells like inmates. And I was like, oh, no.
Yeah, I went to Stockton, but I was not given a choice.
Oh, no way.
Yeah.
Yeah. I felt like a queen. I was like, really? I get a pick? I get to pick a prison? Because, at that time, they didn't give you choices. They were like, hey, Pelican Bay, like yes or no, and that was it.
So you requested CCWF and you got it?
I requested CCWF.
And then you went to Galt.
And I went to Galt. Mm-hmm.
And how long were you in Galt for?
At 16 weeks.
That's confusing to me as why you would have to do 13 weeks prior to doing a 16-week academy.
Well, they didn't recognize, and honestly, this is just me thinking that, because when I went to Galt, right, it was totally different.
Curriculum,
yes. It was similar, but it was different, And also at the college, it was a lot of teachers, professors that were teaching us, like people that were in the law enforcement field.
Yeah.
But not too many of them that were from corrections.
Correct.
We did have a couple.
Knuckle draggers.
Yeah.
No, they're usually like sheriffs or like police.
Yes, exactly.
Doing overtime out there,
right.
Little side money.
And don't get me wrong, I mean, very knowledgeable.
Absolutely.
But even at the academy, it's not anything that they said. I mean, I'm sorry, but you just throw it out the window as soon as you start, because it's just a whole different story when you go to.
You
the prison.
began what year, Galt?
In April of 07.
April of 07. The sergeants that you remember, do you remember if they had a lot of time in, mixed, a little bit of time in, and were they trying to act like drill sergeants?
Yeah. Yeah. And you know what's crazy? I actually have a little PTSD from one of the sergeants because of when I was learning how to shoot the mini, or just, weapon, or what was it? The revolver.
Yeah.
So the mini and the revolver at that time. And the instructor, man, he had it out for me. He was calling me by my first name, and it was just weird. Like, and honestly, it's kind of, if you think about it, it was a good thing because it made me stronger. It gave me pressure, put me under pressure, stuff like that. But
was that your first introduction to firearms?
Yeah.
Well, that's awesome.
Yeah.
What advice do you have for female listeners that are brand new and considering a job in corrections and are kind of maybe fearing the firearm portion?
Yeah. I highly recommend that you go to your nearest range for sure and get familiar with weapons. For me, it wasn't necessarily the weapon itself. I think it was just more of the qualifying, like all the pressure that they put you through.
It is even for a man, that shit's stressful as hell. Even for a fucking CERT operator, that shit's stressful as hell.
Yeah, and then on top of that, I was not even familiar with the gun.
Correct.
You know what I mean? So here I got all this pressure, and I do recommend, but honestly, I recommend anybody.
That's great advice. That's great advice.
Yeah. You have to go and go to the nearest range and practice. It's just, and honestly, my husband and I, we still go.
Absolutely, 100%.
Yeah.
It's a perishable skill, so you got to stay on top of it.
Yes. So yeah, so after my academy, I mean, I had a good time there.
No, now because I want to get to know more about you and how your experience was. Like, how was the chemical agents portion for you?
Oh man, yeah, that one killed me. So that one,
what was worse for you, the pepper spray in the eyeballs or the gas?
No, that wasn't bad at all in comparison to the CS. Because they put us all in a shed, and they're like, all right, pretty much like lock arms.
Yeah.
And they're like, okay, like, I better not hear any crying, like,
Right.
whatever. And yeah, boom, they blasted it, and they're like, okay, you have to last 30 seconds.
How would you describe the effects of CS gas?
I felt like I was going to die. Like, I felt like I was going to die. I mean, I know that sounds like dramatic,
No,
but I
that's
was just like,
that's spot on. That's spot on.
yeah, because like I couldn't breathe. I couldn't see, you know what I mean? I couldn't hear because I was just all,
Correct.
you know?
Well, it induces panic. That's
Yeah,
one of the
that's exactly what happened, you know, but I will say I didn't throw up.
You
But
didn't?
no, I didn't throw up.
What about like snot running
Oh
down?
yeah, that was just
Yeah.
that was just nonstop. It was crazy, but and I felt like I got punched in the stomach. Like, you know, I just felt
100%.
like the breath was just taking, you know, and but yeah, no, there was people throwing up, and yeah, it was horrible experience.
Oh yeah. So then you get your badge. What was that moment like? Knowing all the hard work you put in, knowing you visited your father in jail. What feelings and emotions were you getting when you graduation day?
You know, my siblings were there, and you know, my closest family was there, and it was an emotional feeling. It's just thinking about it right now makes me emotional because I was like, Dad, I did it, you know, and so, and I wish he would have been able to be there.
He was.
Sympathy, you're right, but I was trying not to cry, but of course.
Good.
But yeah, it was an emotional but very proud moment for me, you know, that I did it. And so, and after that, I was like, okay, now let's, because, you know, you graduate on Friday.
Yeah, now it's game time.
Yeah, it's game time. You know, you graduate on Friday, and then now Monday, business.
You already had your, did you sport the jumpsuit? Or
What
two-piece?
did I
Like, because
have?
they had the
No.
jumpsuit was very popular back in the day.
Yeah, you're right. I did have my jumpsuit.
You had your
yeah, I
brand
don't
new
think I-
duty belt, you're ready to,
Yes, because so they made us graduate in Class A's, right? So I think my first day I wore my Class A's. They're like, hey, wear your Class A's. And then we had orientation. So that was pretty cool because, you know, the union came in and they were like, hey, this is what's up, you know, this is what you got to do. And they showed us everything, you know, where the most important place still is, I'm sure, which is personnel assignments, right? Because that's where, well, for us,
yeah.
that's where we put in our vacation.
Yeah,
That's where we put in our
holidays.
holiday, because that's really all that matters, right?
Right.
And of course, the money.
So what, in hindsight, looking back with all your experience that you did and how the department had changed over the years, what would you say the focus of training cadets was? Like safety and security? Was it more focused on rehabilitation of inmates?
No, you mean when I was going
When
to
you
the
initially went through?
Yeah,
What was the
no.
focus on?
The focus is all about safety and security. All about, you know, hey, and this is they drilled this into my head and to all of our head. Hey, just work as though you're on camera, you know.
Facts.
And you know, be professional. Professionalism was another thing. Integrity, you know, being a good relief. They would chill that. They're like, hey, you sign up for overtime, you know, you better take it. Like, and just know you're not going home. You know, when you go to work, you're not going to go home. Say bye to the holidays and all that.
Absolutely. Break it down a little bit further when they mean by like, hey, work like if you're on camera.
Yeah. So basically they said, hey, you know, and it happens, you know, people that say that right now, if you're at a prison and there are no cameras there, so you think.
Correct.
You know, because
the inmates are fucking recording you from their cell.
they're exactly. But at that time,
Yeah.
you had a lot of, you know, like ISU planting cameras because there's so much craziness going on in the prisons
Yeah.
that you don't know if you're being watched.
Right.
And so, yeah. And as far as, so you had to act as though you're working on camera. 'Cause
basically,
you never know.
don't beat the shit out of anyone. Don't fucking don't
Exactly.
run your mouth.
Yeah.
Right. And
Just be professional. Do your job.
Correct.
You know, be as though, you know, just, that's it. Follow the rules, follow the laws, follow policy. You know, do what you're supposed to do the right thing.
it almost seems like a simple.
Common sense,
It almost,
you know?
but we're
Yeah.
surprised. Yeah.
It's common sense.
Right.
But, you know, and you think, oh, yeah. I mean, yeah, that's obvious. We know that, you know, going to work. And then you learn that that's not how it's operating.
So you get there. What are some of your first assignments? What are some things that you see now? Did you recognize any former inmates from being OT?
Yeah. There's a few of them that recognize me.
Hey guys, consider becoming a patron where you will get first exclusive dibs on the video before it airs to the public, and you'll get to ask the guest special questions that you have in mind. So that's also another way to support the channel. Thank you guys. Appreciate all of you. Keep pushing forward. Make sure you hit that link in the description below.
Not right off the bat, like over, some
Yeah.
time, because, we had different yards, and the yard that I was working on, that I didn't really.
Can you break down the layout for us? Because I have no idea what CCWF looks like.
Yeah, it's just think of it as a big, I guess like a circle, right? So then
A circle?
Like here's this, and it's divided, into 4 yards, right?
So like 4 slices of the pie?
Yeah, well, I know it's kind of hard to say. So we have 4 different yards, right? We have A yard, which is our reception.
Okay.
So right when you walk in, you have one facility, which is A yard. Then you keep walking, then you have another yard, which is Bravo. Then you continue, then Charlie, and then Delta. And then you go on the other side, then you have like the central services, like the main yard. That's where the gym is at. That's where, control. And
The main yard.
yeah, the main yard is where, that's where you have your library.
Do each yard have its own recreational yard?
They have a yard, but it's not like the main yard. And so like on every yard has like a little, I don't even know if it's grass. Before I left, it was like all dried out, but it's like a big old, lawn area, humongous. And they did have, I think they had a volleyball court, or they were allowing it. They had a little basketball.
Do all
court.
inmates from every yard go to one recreational yard?
Yeah.
Oh, no way.
No.
No? Okay.
No, every yard has their own yard, and
Okay.
they go out to that yard.
Okay.
However, I just heard recently they are allowing, and I think I don't know if it's mixed, if they're mixing it, but when I first started, it was mixed.
Yeah.
Reception didn't go out to the main yard,
Right.
but Bravo, Charlie, Delta, they all these inmates went to this main yard, and it was wild.
Back then was the overcrowding problem.
Yes.
Because at all the other prisons, we had bunk beds on the day room. We had gyms that were full.
Yeah, we
Was
did.
your prison going through the same thing?
Oh yeah, it was overcrowded to the max.
What was that like?
It was mixed, so you had it was crazy because, I mean, you have it like at the men's also, where you have your bullies, if you will. At the women's, it's like more like your bullies or shot callers or whatever you want to call it. And, and they're more about like, hey, clean your room. They give all the inmates chores, like, hey, and you'll see when you go into their cell, they have like chores that all the inmates have to do. And so the inmates that don't want to keep up with that, or don't want to be bossed around or bullied or whatever,
Yeah.
they will go to the day room, or they wanted to bunk in the day room because they were afraid, or they didn't want to deal with that, or they would go to the gym. That was the popular place, like the safe place.
These shot caller type women, bullies, did they have like a physical description? Did they all kind of look the same, or they varied?
No, they varied.
'Cause I'm imagining like short haircut, kind of stocky.
Yeah, most of them, yes, but no, not necessarily.
No, not necessarily. It didn't make him mad. It didn't.
No, it
Whoever
didn't
was
matter.
the alpha female dominated.
Yeah. And a lot of it had to do with like, let's say, one of the rooms would have, all of their people in there. So then the outsiders that were living in there, of course, they would get bullied,
Okay, I asked you to give us a description of like all the yards, which you did. Now, what does a unit look like?
So the unit looks like, it's like a big X. So you have, like this, so all down each is a wing. And so like it's, when you go down a hallway, right, just like this, you have one side of dorms and their rooms. They look like, best way I could describe it is like hotel rooms. They have...
You hotel rooms and not cell rooms?
Yeah, they're dorms, yeah. They have a door, you go in, and they have like 2 sinks, and then they have a...
So maybe it looks like college dorm or something?
Yeah, kind of like that, yeah. And then they have their own shower, and then they have their own toilet.
How many females per room?
At that time, it was 8 inmates.
Should I
per
call
room.
it? Do you guys call it a room, a cell? What do you guys call it?
We would normally call them rooms. Rooms, like go to room, whatever, or
No way.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it's pretty
And
much.
the door, what does the door look like? Is it like a prison door?
Yeah, I mean, it's just a heavy duty door.
Heavy-duty door?
Yeah, and then with a big old window.
And they have their own key?
No.
No?
No.
You guys have a Folger Adams key?
No, so that's like a little tiny key, and then we call it key the wing, and there's like a thing, what do you call it? So you could put the key. I can't even think right now, and then it just opens up all the rooms,
All of them.
all the
Okay.
doors. Yes, and then they only have like 30 seconds, and then it'll lock up.
Cool.
Yeah.
So 8 females per room. And you were saying that if what were you saying? That if one girl has her whole crew there,
Yes.
there's an outsider?
Yeah, if you have an outsider in the room, of course they're gonna be bullied, or they'll bully them until they get
Oh, hell
say
no.
hey, like the inmates will legit be like, hey, this one got to go, you need a mover. And it's like, what? Wait, how about this? How about I freaking move all of you guys and keep her in there? How about that? Like,
So
Yeah.
how many correctional officers, what is the ratio? Where are they located?
so the officers are right in the center
Of the X?
of the X, yes, and then it's like they would call it a fishbowl because that's kind of what it looks like, and it's just glass all around. And then-
Elevated or not elevated?
No, it's not elevated. No, and then there's a control panel where we could also control, but they didn't want us to. So we could, from that control panel, we could open the doors also.
Are you in a lock? Are you in a lock secured environment?
Yeah, it's locked.
Why is that? I'm having a hard time understanding because, like, on a level 4 GP, you're on a podium,
Yeah.
nothing around you with inmates. But this seems a little bit more secure for the cops.
It is, and it's actually nice, and that's
Yeah.
what I do like about it. And then when I was doing my COSITs, I did see that it was podiums,
podium.
or it was like that in ADSEG, but the inmates in there are not freely walking. So
Correct.
But there is one building that is like that. It's like, I believe it's a 180 design, and they have a podium also.
So
But they
this
have,
perfect layout that you just gave of us, is this a type of unit where recently the girls went off all crazy and did the ultimate riot?
yeah.
Like, that's the setup it was?
Yeah. Yep.
Wow.
That's so. See, if so a building can hold about 256 inmates.
Oh, my God.
Yes.
Yeah.
And recently, like right before I left, they had I want to say they had what do you call it, where they didn't allow, like, so basically some bunks were like as though they didn't exist, so inmates couldn't live in there. So like I think they would like do like 6 inmates were allowed to live in there or whatever, just because they want to minimize the amount of inmates living in a room.
Okay.
So, but when I first started, it wasn't like that. So if we had we would get broken windows, because they would fight, and it would be like, shoot, how are we going to move these inmates out? And
Are those windows the thick windows?
yeah, they're,
So they would just crack them, right?
yeah, they would crack them or completely break. They would, yeah. They weren't like, I mean,
They weren't like a regular house window.
no.
Okay.
No.
Cool.
No. Yeah, they were pretty thick. But yeah, they were.
Now, you're a cop. You're wearing your uniform. Okay, so you mentioned the cops in the little control area. Is some of your duties that you got to walk around and look around?
Yeah, so you would definitely have to do your security checks.
Okay.
That's like very important, And I would do sometimes more, like depending on the building that I worked in. Like if you worked in like where that riot popped off at, those are the kind of buildings that you never want to miss your security.
100%.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
Can you advise newer correctional officers the importance of conducting security checks?
Yeah, it's one of your main jobs. No matter where you work at,
Right.
whether you're working on the yard, whether you're working in a building or wherever, it's very utmost important thing, because that's when things are going on. And me personally, what I would do is I would do a security check, and then I would do another one.
Smart.
You know what I mean? And I would hold
Smart.
my keys. But this is when I first started.
Yeah,
I would
you would
hold
hold
my
your keys. Yeah.
And I was like, the inmates gave me a little nickname. They would call me, oh, Miss, I'm going to get you.
Miss, I'm gonna get you.
Yeah, that's what
Yeah.
they would call me, because I'm like, oh no, you ain't not on my watch,
Yeah.
because that's when they're doing the drugs. That's when they're beating somebody up, or that's when they're, a lot of the females would, they'd have sexual relationships
Ooh.
and yeah. And so if they knew that, and them too, they would like to,
Board up.
yeah, but they would, because it was bunks, so they would put their blankets and cover up.
Yeah.
And so you can't see them. So you would have to go over there and, hey, take your blankets down, take that down. Tent up. That's what they would call it. They would tent up.
Okay.
Yeah, and so, but that's how you eliminate. If the inmates know that you're doing your security checks consistently on point, you're gonna eliminate and deter a whole lot of stuff.
100%.
Yes.
It is being proactive.
Yeah, you're being proactive, and sometimes I'm not saying that there's not gonna be the time where the inmates are gonna fight, whatnot. But see, and this is what I'm. So like one time, because I was working on the yard, and after we do a release, I would go to every building and I would help the officer release for chow. And then I would go, hey, let me do a security check. You do all this other stuff and I'll help you with a security check, just to make sure there was nothing going on, or make sure all the doors are locked and secure. Because what the inmates would like to do is they would like to put their ID or something right there, so that way the door could stay unlocked. And so I would go check the doors.
Yeah.
And sure enough, and this is why you have to be consistent, but sure enough, there's two inmates fighting, because they're thinking,
right,
oh, this is a good time. Nobody's here. Nobody's going to catch it. Oh, no. And sure enough, yeah, they're fighting. And that's when they do it. During those mass releases, that's when things happen.
I mean, you got to think like a criminal.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, you got to kind of appreciate it that they're not doing it in front of you. But at the same time, our job is to maintain safety and security. That's our main job.
I don't know why, but I have a strong hunch that this like newer generation, right, is not doing the little things like checking the doors. And I can't really blame them for the current circumstance and situation and climate that they're in.
Before I left, I was noticing, and I'm gonna be honest, I did it too. I would get to my point where, get into my my days where I would have like a lazy day,
right?
But not a constant, like if I'm tired or whatever, But before I left, I was injured, so I was like trying to do as minimal as possible.
Right.
But you are not gonna ever catch me not doing, making sure that, do my safety and security checks, or make sure that.
And not because you love inmates, because you love your paycheck. And you love your career.
Yeah.
And you want to secure that shit.
And yes, that, and not only that, but everybody relies on you to maintain that safety. You know what I mean? Like,
even the supervisors appreciate that.
Yeah. I mean, that's just our job. And I feel like people just forget that that's our main job. You know what I mean? Like, and it's like there's this culture of like laziness, like, and it's like it's got to the point to where, I don't know if you ever heard about this, where they talk about where officers are now like refusing to do holdovers.
Correct.
So they call it motor, and so in other words, a mandatory. I forgot what it's like holdover. It's basically if the sergeant calls you and says, "Hey, I'm holding you over." And then you say, oh, motor. So you're refusing your holdover, your mandatory overtime, basically. And it's like, okay, well, bring a doctor's note. That's what the sergeant tells them. And it's like, wait.
What is motor? A pay code?
Yeah, I think it's like mandatory overtime refusal or something like that.
Doctor's order or something like that. So it's like, wow, that's pretty bold.
That is bold. And it's like, think about it. When we first started, like, can you imagine saying, no, I refuse to work over, or I refuse to be held? Like the culture that we had at that time when we first started,
right?
That's like unheard of. You know what I mean? Because why? Like,
I will say this: I never refused to order over. I did, however, call in sick the following day after I was held over.
Oh yeah, I mean, yeah, but that's the right thing to do.
Just take the hit.
Yeah,
and I always pack for a double. And
you know what I've done? I mean, I would take my hit.
Yeah.
Or like, let's say whatever, something going on or whatever, I would wait till everything's said and done, after chow, hey, I'm going home sick.
Yeah,
You know what I
that's
mean?
an option.
Yeah, but to flat
But
out
just to
refuse,
flat out is wild. And this didn't just start recently. It's been since 2020 ish.
man. I mean, and then like
It's
it's I don't know.
so the way you view things now is, do you believe it was a fuck, man? Like, do you believe it was a perfect storm? A new generation of cops, a new agenda with the department, a new breed of inmates. Do you believe like the change?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't know if you're okay to talk about the California model right now,
Oh, 100%.
but see, like when we first started, or when I first started, we had control of the inmates. We had, and I'm not saying 100%, but the inmates respected the law. They respected you. Hey, you did your job. You did what was supposed to be done. They had the trust that they knew that you were going to do your job. And for the most part, they listened. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, there was fights, there was drinking, there was this and that, drugs, whatever. But then you fast forward to like the pandemic. And I would like to talk about that too, but that's going off track. But then we locked all the inmates down, right? We locked them down.
What was the pandemic at CCWF like?
I was out of control.
Were the women complaining?
Oh, yeah. But not like you would think. You know what they worried about more than anything?
What?
Was their property.
Why?
And that was some bull crap. So what our wonderful administration there at CCWF, what they decided to do, and maybe it wasn't even them. I'm not sure where it came from, but their great idea was to, hey, let's go ahead. These inmates have COVID. They have the COVID. So let's go ahead and take them all out and put them in the gym where they're not even, isolated.
Yeah, it was the administration. Same shit happened at Donovan.
Yeah. So now, and then you got them doing it in the middle of the night where you have like, a skeleton crew as it is.
Right.
And you're freaking uprooting all these inmates at, 1 a.m. and saying, hey, don't even worry about it. Leave your property there. You're going to come back because we're just quarantining you. We're going to put you in the gym. Don't worry, you're going to come back. And you know what ends up happening? They don't send them back to their rooms.
Correct.
So now you have all this property that's, and you know what the crazy thing is too? They end up putting other inmates in those rooms with the other inmates' property still in those rooms.
Oh my God.
Can
You're
you
giving me
imagine
anxiety.
what kind of mess that is?
Yeah, I just want to let the administration know, that was horrible plan. Well, no planning at all.
No planning at all.
The position that they put the correctional officers in was freaking disastrous.
It was very disastrous.
Pulling inmates, making us move inmates in the middle of the night, leaving their property, putting other inmates in there with other people's property was a freaking disaster, a nightmare, and incompetence. Sorry, I just had to get that off my chest.
You're absolutely right. That's exactly what it was, There was no, and then, you got to remember, here we have, nobody knows what's going on with this virus, so everybody's freaking out, so you're at home. Like there's rumors that they were saying, hey, you guys might not even go home. You might have to quarantine at the prison. Mm-hmm. And I was like, what? And I mean, my husband works there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like imagine both of us having to.
Dang, that's not good.
Yeah. So now we have this anxiety going on. We have kids at home. Like,
yeah, which is priority.
Yes, exactly. And so I was just like, so you have that going on. Then the vaccine comes about. They're like, then our weak. I'm sorry, but I'm gonna say this. Our weak union reps were coming around saying, oh, you have to get the vaccine because it's mandatory and this and that. You might get fired, and and I'm about research. I'm like, you ain't gonna just tell me, oh, here, take this freaking poison, and then shut up about it.
Correct.
Like, no, what? You're not. And then you see, all these dumb.
I'm glad you have a brain.
Yeah, thank you. Then you have these dumb freaking mayors saying, oh well, I'll give you some money. You could go buy yourself a burger and fries if you take this stupid vaccine. And it's like, wait, what's really going on? So I did my research, and I was like, absolutely not. I'm not taking that. And I was willing to get fired. So we knew at that time, so you have all this craziness going on, and then now running the risk of getting fired because I was not going to inject poison into my body.
You know, a lot of people always hit me up like, hey, Hector, should I be a correctional officer? I hear about the stories you tell. And it's like, these are the untold stories of the unnecessary stress and anxiety.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we're rolling up to the prison, and they're like, are you vaccinated? And I'm like, none of your business. I'm not answering that damn question.
I remember
What?
that they had checkpoints in the parking lot.
Yeah, and then they're checking my
Temperature.
like, and then you have to go get tested. You don't even have
Freaking
any
retarded,
symptoms,
man.
and then you have to wear a mask. And that was another thing. I was like, I'm not wearing my mask. Like, yeah, I
Right.
put it right here, but I mean, if a
Right.
sergeant or lieutenant came out of respect, I put it up because
Correct.
I'm not disrespectful. But I'm like, and I'm not going to enforce these inmates to wear a mask either.
Right.
And it was a really wild time. And at that time, actually, on top of all of that, I was going through some stuff because we had the building that I was working in, they had it was a crazy building because it was an honor dorm.
Describe an honor dorm.
So honor dorm is basically where inmates have to be right up free for 2 years.
Okay.
So, I mean, you think about it. So our prison is a level 4 prison.
That's why.
But on paper, it's a level 2,
Okay.
right? We have the death row there. We have, LWOPs there. We
Now.
have,
With the
Yeah.
changes.
well, yeah, but at that time, death row was still active. We still had death row.
Hold on. You had, because holy shit. So I'm aware of death row San Quentin,
Yeah.
but there was female death row inmates?
Yeah.
And there was a death row at CCWF?
Yes.
I didn't know about this.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we have.
Where were they housed?
They were housed in ADSEG. And ADSEG is, well, you know what ADSEG, but so they had like the bottom tier all set up where they had like a treadmill. They had their own refrigerator, I believe. I might be wrong on that, but I want to say they did. But they had all these things for the death row that they had their own washer and dryer. And every single building, by the way, has washers and dryers.
Would they exit their cells without restraints?
Yeah, so yes. But it was secured. It was like gated.
Would they be able to intermingle with other inmates?
No.
Okay, so
There's
it was
only
pretty much
death
ran
row.
like a lockup unit.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
But they were able to come out to like what they would consider their day room, and they would, talk to each other. They were able to mingle with each other.
Was there ever any incidents there or not really?
They had fights here
Okay.
and there. But I mean, you had the death row inmate was,
What does a female get condemned to death for? Same type of crime as a man does?
Oh, yeah. I mean, you know what's crazy, though, is that some of those inmates that are on death row, well, it's not even activated anymore. It's like they're roaming, they're roaming throughout the prison now,
fuck it.
right?
Probably hanging on level 1 right now as we speak.
Yeah.
They're probably at a fucking
Oh,
fire
yeah.
camp as we speak
Well,
right
yeah,
now.
see, because when I was working in that building, that's when they had they were saying, hey,
Yeah.
we're going to release some of and they were putting them in the honor dorm. But
Hold on.
yes.
Hold on, you're giving me chest pains. So you mean to tell me inmates from the condemned row went over to the honor dorm? And
Yeah.
let me guess, only because they didn't have write-ups.
Well, yeah. Because they met their criteria. You know what I mean? So they were able to go into, and honestly, I mean, it's like, you get to a point where nothing surprises you anymore.
I'm not saying, right, that I'm not saying that maybe condemned females cannot be honorable at some point in time, but how about a little bit of like a step down process or a little bit of observation, but they just fucking went for it, huh?
Yeah. They said, oh, yeah, here you go.
What partakes on an honor dorm? Do they get more privileges than a regular
Yes.
unit?
Yes, they get a lot more freedom.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, but, some people ran it differently. Like, I like to, say that I like to control my environment.
Correct.
I like things to be, organized. I like things to be safe. I like things to be, controlled, basically. And so when I went in there, it was actually the officer before me, she ran a pretty tight ship. So she was good. And then, but then when I went in there, I was pretty much the same thing. I was running a tight ship. And of course, the inmates were okay with it because they were already used to it, you know. But then it got to the point to where, like, I was starting to find out things that they were doing, you know, and I was trying to hold them accountable for it. And then that's when things started getting a little crazy. So when I was in this particular building, they had a dog program in there.
Okay.
And so that dog program, well, at the time I didn't know. I was all for it. I was like, cool.
Yeah.
It's helping the public, because what they would do is they would train these dogs and they would go out to help people with, like, you know, disabilities.
PTSD, military.
Yeah, PTSD, stuff like that, right? Which is, I'm all for it, you know. But at the same time, they're still inmates, and you know what I mean? Like, people would go and pet the dogs, which is all good. And I would pet them here and there, but I wasn't getting on the ground, like, petting them and playing with these dogs.
The COs were?
Yeah, some would. Anyways, that's a whole nother story.
You just reminded me of something. I think you just reminded me of something that happened. Like, a new CO was running to an alarm at Donovan, and he stopped to pet the dog, and then he continued running.
What the
Yeah,
freak?
something like that. So it just kind of reminded me. Yeah, and we looked at the camera. Sure as shit, he did that. But yeah. Go ahead. Sorry about that. No, I mean, fuck, this is where we're at these days. But go ahead.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. See, stuff like that. No, but what was going on was this program was out of control, which I noticed during the pandemic. I didn't notice how out of control it was because, you know, in front of us, the inmates were like all like following rules and doing what they're supposed to do, you know, all this other stuff.
Yeah.
But then, of course, the pandemic came down, and then everything slowed down, right? Everything was, and I took it serious, like, because I didn't know what was going on. Like, I didn't want to get, I got COVID, and I was sick. I thought I was going to die, you know what I mean? So, and people were dying from COVID, you know? So anyway, but yeah, I discovered that the inmates were pretty much running that program to the point to where they were making moves. They were saying who was going to go into that program, who was going to get moved, all this stuff. They were running it.
Did you guys have like a MACREC program as well?
Yeah, we have.
IAC or whatever?
Mm-hmm.
And and this was not the IAC making those moves?
No.
This was like the inmates?
Well, I discovered that the I'm going to call her a dog lady because I can't say her real name. I don't want to say her name.
Yeah, dog lady.
So I found out the dog lady was doing whatever these inmates wanted.
Of course she was.
But yeah, she was doing whatever they wanted. So I brought that to the attention of, you know, while I went to through my chain of command.
Yeah.
And so I went to the sergeant and I said, hey, check this out. This is what's going on. This is not cool. This is not okay, you know. And then he was like, oh, yeah, you know, no, you don't have to do anything she tells you to do, which we're making bed moves. Because these inmates were trying to tell me where inmates were going to. I was like, I don't think so. So they would go to her and she'd be like, oh, I want these inmates moved. And I'm like,
let's rewind back to 2007, 2008, 2009. If an inmate attempted to try to get for you to make a bed move, how would that situation play out?
Well, first of all, that wouldn't even happen.
Correct.
But if it did happen, that inmate would get moved.
Okay.
You know what I mean? That inmate's like, hey, check it out. You ain't running nothing.
Exactly.
And now you're going to get moved.
And now we fast forward to this part of time, post-pandemic, and now they're just straight up running amok.
Ballsy. Yeah, they're running amok. But why? I mean, somebody gave them that power, that entitlement. You know what I mean? And here I come, and I'm like, no. I mean, you're an inmate. I need to put you back in your place because that's not how things work.
Yeah, and it's not because you're mean or because you hate inmates. It's because, like you stated earlier, you have to ensure a safe environment for everyone.
Yeah, and you know, I discovered that, you know, if they didn't like an inmate, they were making things really bad for that inmate. You know what I mean?
How do inmates get down? Like in a male institution, they'll just literally stab you to death sometimes. But how do females exert their...
See, these females are, they're just very manipulative. And the saying goes that if they're talking, they're lying. You know, that's what the saying goes. Because you don't know if they're trying to manipulate. And they'll smile, you know what I mean? Like they look all presentable and everything, and they're rule following and all that good stuff, but they have an agenda. You know what I mean? And it's hard to understand that if you don't see it. You know what I mean? But I was there. I was working. To get into the honor dorm, you had to have years in the department. You know, you had to have seniority.
You did? How?
Oh, yeah.
How?
Unless it was a management spot, you were not going to work in there.
Oh, because of the seniority-wise.
Yeah.
Seniority-wise.
So one of the jobs became bid, so I was able to bid into it.
Well, wow. So go back to CCWF. Was that one of the more pristine positions that the senior cops wanted to work?
Yeah, was in an honor dorm. Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. Because, you know, you're not dealing with the fighting and the drama, like, you know, maybe well, they had contraband, but it was not.
How is it now, the honor dorm? Is it off the hook?
Yeah. I mean, I heard that, yeah, it's pretty much off the hook.
Not very
Well, see,
honorable?
what they ended up doing is they ended up messing up like they always do. They always want to, they're like, hey, what can I mess up? You know, administration always
Yeah.
thinks like, how can I make this bad? You know,
Correct.
so let's do it, you know? And so what they ended up doing was they put the DDs in there. And so, yeah.
Oh, my God, damn, dude.
Yes, all bad. And actually, I treated them like all the other inmates. I'm like, check it out.
Well,
You know,
real quick, you know,
Yeah.
I have a YouTube channel called That Prison Garden. I often call people booger eaters. Right. This is kind of who I refer to as the booger eaters.
Yes.
Right. And then, you know, they're DD, developmentally disabled, you know,
Yeah.
and I shouldn't be calling them booger eaters. But these individuals, you have to prompt. You have to
Yes.
prompt them. Hey, take a shower, brush your
Yes.
teeth. Don't do that. Stop. Don't light your cell on fire.
yeah, exactly.
Don't kill me.
Yeah,
Right.
right,
And they
exactly.
put these types of people in the honor dorm.
Yes.
No freaking way, man.
Yep. So, you know, that was an issue in itself because, you know, here you got, and then you got these inmates who don't follow rules, who are just doing their own program. But I started treating them like, you know, the rest of them. And we had an officer designated, like, specifically to work with these
The
inmates.
DDs. Yeah,
And
because
he's
because
awesome.
of the documentation you have to do
Yes, and I hate paperwork. I'm the
Correct.
first one to admit that I don't like paperwork and I
Yeah.
don't like to deal with all that.
I feel you.
And so yeah, so he was awesome. And he's like the whisperer of the DDs and
No,
EOPs
you need
and all
those
that
people.
stuff. And as far as I know, he's still there. And yeah, he's awesome. You know, and I would be like, hey, you know, this and that, and he'd be like, all right, I got it.
from. Did it ever get to a point where the senior cops bounced and bid out?
Oh man, yeah. I mean, I can't. Right before I left, I want to say, pretty much, you can't catch a senior cop in a building. I mean, I highly doubt it. that
Where
there's-
in CCWF can a senior cop be safe at?
Shoot, nowhere.
Nowhere?
Nowhere. You're not safe anywhere. Unfortunately, you're not. I mean, your officers are retiring. Like, I mean, I
And we're not
retired.
necessarily talking about safe as in danger. We're talking about safe as in like career prolongment.
Yes.
Like how to fucking keep your fucking
yeah,
job
exactly.
till retirement.
How to stay under the radar
Yeah.
because you're just trying to
Survive.
survive. Exactly. Just show up to work, do
Don't see nothing,
whatever.
don't
yeah.
say nothing, don't hear nothing.
And see, and that's where we go back to the lazy culture, you know. And it's like, do you blame them in a sense?
No.
You know what I mean? Like,
But I will say this though, and maybe you can piggyback off of this. I totally get the environment. I totally get the agenda. But I myself am not going to sacrifice safety and security
Right.
for me or my people
yes,
or my job,
Yeah.
right, for me or my people at the expense of being lazy.
exactly.
You got to draw that line.
Oh yeah, I mean, people get to the point, and I don't even know if it's lazy. Maybe it's scared. I don't even know what you want to call it because you got. I mean, right before I left, you know, right before I retired, you got people responding to alarms and not even doing anything. Basically, watching an officer get jumped or watch an officer get beat up.
I've seen that.
And it's like, are
I've seen
you
that at every
freaking serious?
prison. You know, I see a lot of
Yeah.
videos.
Yeah. And it's like, to me, I'm sorry, you fire them. Like, why
Right.
are they even there? Because you don't belong in a prison if you're not even going to help your partner. I mean, if you see two inmates fighting and you don't want to get involved, I mean, you should, but
Right.
But to see your partner getting attacked and then you not doing anything, that's crazy.
With all your experience, all your life experiences, all your corrections experiences, how do you view those people that do not get involved when they're watching their partner getting jumped?
Spineless, like just straight spineless, weak, coward. I mean, all of that.
Yeah.
Because there's no logical reason to not, you know what I mean? Like
100%. I can't fucking fathom it either. I can't understand it. I can't comprehend it. Even if you're going to go in there and get your ass kicked yourself, that's kind of the whole point, you know?
Yes, exactly.
You're sacrificing yourself so your partner doesn't get the fucking full enchilada.
Yeah.
You guys can both take half a fucking enchilada. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. And that's just how it is. It's like, you know, like, I mean, you see, I'm short and I've gained a lot of weight, but I used to be a lot thinner. And I didn't care. Like, I knew that, okay, well, I get into this image, she's probably going to kick my ass, but I don't care.
It's not the point, yeah.
You know, like, just like when the transgenders came over. Oh. You know what I mean?
I'm probably going to have PTSD after this fucking episode, man. It's like, so shocking.
Yeah.
Honestly.
It's like a never-ending, like...
No, it's like a fucking nightmare from hell that's realistic. I mean, some of the stuff you have told me already, honor dorm, condemned inmates, and now COVID. Now let's talk about the transgenders.
Yeah. And I was working in that building too, mind you. We got this is during the pandemic still. You know, I'm telling you, we got all this stuff going on. Then, right in the midst of all that, you got the transgenders coming in. And check this out. So we have the first two that came over, and they housed them on A yard, which is a reception yard. Okay. And then they're like, hey, just want to let you know, okay, this is where the safety and all that goes out the window because we gotta cater to these transgenders because, you know, they're special, you know, for whatever reason. And I was like, okay, so they don't go through work change. They go through the hole, we call it the hole in the wall. It's a door between Alpha yard and Bravo yard, and they just let them straight to my building. No searching, no nothing. They're special.
Did that door normally get used by staff or something?
Yeah, it would be used by staff, but why are we using it for inmates?
Has any other inmate ever went through that?
Yeah,
doorway?
we allow inmates to go. So, because on Bravo yard you have the EOPs. And we have EOPs over there too. Yeah, crazy. So the EOPs would go from Bravo yard to A yard through that door.
Yeah.
To go program, but they're being escorted, right? They're being escorted, you know, whatever. And it was the norm. It's the normal program. But you have reception on that yard too. So that was just wild the way they did that. But inmates did go through that. But see, the thing is that here you have these transgenders. And at that time, I don't know what level, if they were level 1, 2, whatever.
They were basically biological males.
Yeah, they're men. Yeah.
Right.
So that these men came over to program. And then because I'm like I said, I like to control my environment. I'd be like, you're not coming in here until I search you.
Correct.
Because I want to know what you're trying to bring. And why are you even trying to program over here anyways? And why are they programming in the honor dorm? Like, why? Because it's the honor dorm. Why? You know what I mean?
There's no way. I've heard enough. They destroyed the honor dorm by putting DDs, transgenders, death row inmates.
Yeah.
Fuck are they thinking?
Right. Well, I'm telling you. They're like, hey, how can I mess something up? And not only mess it up, destroy it.
Destroy it.
You know what I mean? Like,
annihilate it.
Annihilate it. Like, look, here, we'll just do this. So at every turn, you know, when I was in that building, it was just always a fight. And also, remember, too, this is what I want to tell people, is that when you come across things that are not in policy, you make sure that you call and get clarification, and then you follow up with the email, document, hey, just to understand or clarify what you want me to do, X, Y, and Z, and then let them respond, yeah, that's what I want. Because they're going to say, oh, I didn't say they could program in there. When did I say that? Why are they programming in there?
Wait a minute. Perfect. Great example. So you're about to put some men in an honor dorm, right?
Yeah.
Because they just showed up and maybe your sergeant wants you to. So what you're saying is, hey, you call the sergeant, right? You're advising the new staff, whenever you face any type of situation.
Yes.
Hey, Sarge, this is what you want me to do, right? You want me to put these men in this building? Yeah. Okay, cool. All right, I'm going to shoot you an email right now confirming that this is what you want.
Yep. Or another thing, what I would do is I would say, hey, can you do me a favor and email me
They won't,
specifically what you want? Oh, sometimes they would, though, because I'd be like, I'm not doing it until you email me that.
Yeah.
Unless they gave me a direct order, then I'm not that crazy.
Yeah.
To be like, oh, no, and be insubordinate,
Well, for the viewers that are completely oblivious, here's why. So if a man were to ever go into an honor dorm and strangle the shit out of a female and kill her.
Or rape her.
Bloody mess everywhere, they're going to blame the cop.
Exactly.
They're going to blame the CO.
Yes.
And they're going to wash their fucking hands clean and just live another day.
Yeah, and then you're going to get fired because nobody told you to do that when, because there's no proof. Where's the documentation? Who told you to do that? What are you thinking, because that's what they do.
Part of the whole NDF mixing non-designated program, mixing GPs, F's and Y's, Fresno Bulldogs, it's all the same concept. You're putting people where they shouldn't be.
Exactly.
At the expense of everyone.
Yeah, and then I have inmates coming to me like, hey, Miss Rod, what do I do? What?
As this world is going to hell at CCWF, are the female inmates liking this uneasiness and unsecure, or are they disliking it?
Oh no, they were disliking it. And see, the I don't know how it is to work with the men, but when these men came over, I treated them as an inmate, like how I do, the rest of them. I don't care, you're a man or whatever, transgender as they want to. I'm not going to treat you special. I don't care.
Right.
602 me, do whatever you want to do, And I just feel like a lot of people, the inmates, everybody was like walking on eggshells. Not everybody. A lot of people were a little like intimidated because they didn't want the wrath.
They don't want to poke the bear.
They don't want to poke the bear, and I just continue to do my job. Other than, something was quite like, why are they programming in my building when they could go to another building?
Did that create issues for you? You not changing up your MO and continuing your
You
style?
know what? Actually, surprisingly, the men, I don't know, they never told me specifically, but they always respected me. It? When I was working on the yard, so I ended up leaving that building and I was working on the yard, and I had one of the infamous inmates on that yard.
Does his name start with a C?
Yes. And
guy's a real piece of work.
Yeah.
Came from Donovan.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Oh, 100%.
Oh, interesting.
It was mandatory that everywhere he went, he had to go with a video camera because he would allege that the staff were raping him.
Oh, is that why? See, because they would always go to the build. So check it out before I forget. So when he came over, they put him. He was in a wheelchair. Yeah, he came over in a wheelchair, right? But could walk perfectly fine.
100%.
But I'm not a doctor. I mean, I don't know. But anyways, and then they put him in the most. Remember how I tell you, like they like to say, "Hey, how can I destroy or mess up a building?" Well, they put him in the most vulnerable building, which is where all the women go to. They're either recovering from cancer or they're really old. They can't care for themselves. Yeah, they put him in that building. And not only did they put him in that building with the vulnerable, they said that he had to have a bunkie.
Had to have one? Why? What do you mean had to have one?
Yeah, they said that he can't live by himself.
Who the fuck said that?
That came up from above, like, you know what I mean? Like, it was above the warden, supposedly.
I am convinced now, after you told me that there's evil people in this world.
Oh, yeah.
And this is evilness playing out.
Yeah.
Right? Because there is no other logical explanation why somebody would say this man has to have a bunkie, right, in this female prison.
That's weird.
Besides evil.
And not to mention, this person has a history of violence.
And rape.
Yes. And so now you're forcing, because you got to remember, if these inmates refuse to live with these men,
they get written up.
How is that even fair for them? Like, they're being forced to live with men.
Okay.
And you got to remember, too, some of these women have been victims of rape and been victims of abuse and been, they've been through a whole lot of stuff. and now they are being forced to live with men.
This is probably the most like eye-opening fucking episode that we literally ever had.
Yeah.
I mean, the stuff we're talking about is, I don't know how to tell the public this. You had a male transgender who was a real piece of work at Donovan. He's all over the news. Violent, criminal, predator. Last name starts with a C, ends with an arrow. And they house him in a female housing unit. And somebody up above, I don't know, Jeff McCumber's fucking area of expertise, said he must have a female cellmate. Yep. And these females don't have a say in it. A lot of them were victims of sexual assault themselves. I have a fucking daughter, and that's really pissing me off right now.
Oh yeah, and us, you know, as female officers, you know, the inmates were running to us for some type of, you know, safety. You know, like, what do we do? What can I do? And all I could tell them was, the only option they have is to 602. My
brain works a little different.
Yeah.
Right? I'll be like, you want that problem to go away? Here. Right?
Yes.
Make that problem go away forever. That's just the way my brain thinks. Like, hey, there's only one way to eliminate this fucking problem right now.
Yeah.
But you can't think like that as a CO, right? But you're in a really fucked up position.
You are. Well, we were. We were put in a really messed up predicament because now, like, remember I was talking about the security checks. Now those security checks, like, were very important. You know what I mean? Because
those are not security. Those are like life checks. Those are like fucking. Yeah.
And then you know
God checks. You know because
you know what's crazy is that after the first allegation, right, of sexual assault, that inmate was I don't know, I might be getting my story wrong, but I know for a fact that he didn't go to ADSEG.
Of course he didn't.
No.
You got motherfuckers killing dudes on yards right now that are not going to ADSEG.
Oh wow, I didn't even know that.
100%.
That's wild. Then you get another allegation. I mean, at what point? I mean, come on. Yes, the females they're inmates, but that's
which
inhumane.
Goes back to the evil. Yeah, inhumane. Fucking, what do they call those? Civil rights violations.
Yeah, that's wrong. That is very wrong.
So when I was thinking how I was gonna solve that problem with, like, maybe eat a steak dinner at the podium, accidentally leave my knife there and go home for the day. You know what I mean? But let them handle it. But that's fucking crazy.
But you know, you got to remember, yes. So like that building that he was in, these are inmates that are not troubled. They're not violent. So you're putting him with non-violent, most vulnerable inmates. What are they going to do?
So during that chaos that you're talking about,
yeah.
I believe I had already quit the department, and I had a lot of female inmates and like advocates coming to me for help, man. And I tried my best to air out that truth.
Yeah. And I mean, like, like during the pandemic, the inmates were coming to me and they're like, should I get the vaccine? And I said, I can't tell you what to do. I go, but I'll tell you what, I'm not going to get it. Or you know what I mean? Like, and I would tell them, like, they would come to me and they'd be like, hey, Miss Rod, what would you do if you were me? And right. I'm like, I'm different. Right. Like, I'm not going to that's not going to happen. I'm not going to allow some man to live in my cell, my room. You do. But see, you got to remember, these inmates are trying to go home too. Yeah. They're put in they want to go home to their family. So what can they do?
Dude, that is so fucking inhumane. I mean, it's evil. I can't top the word besides evil.
Yeah.
What they did.
It is.
What they did.
And then now look, they got him out.
Exactly. It's sick.
So why was he there to begin with? It was sick. Yeah, I mean, and then...
Is he back in a male institution? I think he is, huh? Mm-hmm. Good.
And it's just, I don't know. It's really sad, and something does need to be done. And one of the things I think needs to be done is that they need to transfer out all the level 3s and level 4s.
No, people need to be held accountable at the top.
Oh, yeah.
For these decisions that they made and continue to make.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. That for sure. But as far as safety and security goes, they need to start getting rid of those level 4s.
Because you don't get a pass. You don't get a pass for getting people raped and getting people killed.
And you're still advocating
Right.
for more to come. I mean, what are they going to do
Right.
when every man says, "I'm a woman now"? Now, what are you going to do?
So how many officers on the seniority roster are there at CCWF?
About, I want to say before I left, like 430 or something like that.
430. During all this stuff that things are going downhill, what was the morale like around amongst the SEALs?
Oh man, horrible, horrible. The morale there, it was like every man for themselves, pretty much. That's the only way I could describe it. And I'm sure it's probably worse.
Had that changed from when you first started your career there?
Oh yeah, absolutely. See, when I first started, like I was naive thinking, oh, everybody's going to help me. Everything's cool, No, you had to earn assistance. You had to earn that knowledge,
Right.
If you had to prove that you were going to work, you had to prove that you were ready to get your hands dirty, if you will, and then people would be, hey, let me help you out. Let me teach you.
Earn your bones.
Yeah, but now it's like a free for all. You got nobody wants to help nobody. Everybody's for themselves. Nobody has your back, and it's just like. But look at the top, though. I mean, it starts from the top, right? Everybody's backstabbing. Everybody's to get to the top. They're stepping on everybody. You know what I mean? And it's like you see it. Nobody.
But in order for change to happen, there has to be change.
Yeah.
Right. Just sitting back and not doing anything, sitting back and complaining, sitting back and being selfish is not the answer.
No, absolutely not.
Right. There has to be a change. I mean, so there has to be sacrifice in whatever way that looks, and I've been thinking about it more and more. Like people are expecting change without doing anything.
Yeah.
It doesn't work that way.
And the thing is that, like they say, the saying goes, you're doing the same thing every day, expecting a different
Insanity.
Yeah, and expecting a different result. Like, how are you going to think things are going to change when your actions are not changing?
Correct.
So, and I truly believe that that's going to have to, of course, we got to start getting rid of people at the top. And we have to get rid of the California model for sure. And people.
Ooh, we didn't even go into that.
Yeah.
How was that pitched to you guys?
Well, when that came about, what was that? I want to say it was around the same time as the pandemic too. That started like getting into talks. They started sending people to Norway. I thought that was a joke. I was like, how? That doesn't even make sense.
Yeah.
These women are violent. You know what I mean? They're assaulting all the time. So like during the pandemic, it was controlled, right? There wasn't too many incidents going on.
Yeah.
And then once we went back to normal, of course, it started getting crazy, right? They were battering each other, battering staff, all the drugs rolling in, all that stuff. We're allowing visitors, so of course, more drugs. All this stuff was going on, right? And then you bring in the California model where it's like you can't hold these inmates accountable anymore. You're trying to write the inmates up and do the right thing, and they're just dropping their write-ups or they're
dismissing them, deleting them,
or undermining anything that you do.
Facts. Basically, they're fudging the numbers. They're cooking the books.
Oh yeah.
They're making write-ups go away to make it look like these programs are effective.
Oh, exactly.
Kind of reminds me of the Menendez brothers, but that's another story.
Yeah.
Same concept.
No, yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right. And they would, and I would see it, and they would be like, "Oh yeah, we're normal program when we're running a skeleton crew." How are we a normal program when we're barely even surviving here? You know what I mean? It's almost like...
Well, there was that massive riot in Ironwood where the 200 sureños went off on the cops. That was a skeleton crew.
That's scary.
It was like 8. It was 200 on 8 with no response from the other sister facility because nobody was at work.
See, and this is my thing. Like, you pay your dues every month, right? People pay their dues every month. And what are they getting at it?
They're golfing with them.
Like, that's a slap in the face.
Well, I mean, it's corruption. It's agenda. It's corruption.
Yeah, and then so that started. The California model started taking place. Then at CCWF there was a big riot.
What did that riot consist of?
So that, and you know what, that riot was bullshit because it actually and the cops didn't have anything to do with it. Like everything, right? they make decisions at the top, and then the officers are the ones having to deal with the drama, with the bullshit,
Right.
you know? And so, as far as I know, because of course I wasn't there, but the chief deputy or AW, somebody made orders for them to go and bring them down to 6 feet, cubic feet,
Yeah.
for the lockers, right? Well, for whoever made the great idea, gave them the great idea to take all the inmates out in the middle of the summer where it gets 115 degrees.
Wow.
And put them in the chow hall.
Yeah.
And I mean that we're talking about 200 inmates.
God damn.
Yes, or, I mean around there, and then now you're leaving them in there for hours. And these inmates, they, like, what did I say during the pandemic? They mostly care about their property. I mean, they've been down for years. They have so much property, and now, you know.
Was it hot? I mean, did you hear that it was hot?
It was extremely hot, and it was in the chow hall. So now it's
muggy,
humid. Yeah, it's
scullery.
muggy, and it's like, you know. So now that's going on. Now they're getting impatient. They're getting irritated. Now they're becoming irate, and then of course, what's bound to happen that you're not letting them out of the chow hall. I mean, they got to use a brush. It's not like
And who's in there? And who's in there? Probably 2 cops. Probably 2 COs.
Yeah.
Kind of just fucking posted.
Yeah, you know, and I mean, can you imagine dealing with a bunch of angry females?
And they got their vest on too. They're hot as fuck.
Oh yeah,
and
they have their equipment. They probably haven't even ate. They probably don't have water, you know, or anything.
So what happens in this riot?
So what ends up happening is the inmates start getting resistive. They're trying to get out. They're being, you know, whatever, and then just all hell breaks loose there. You know what I mean? And honestly, I don't blame the inmates. Like, here you are, you're holding me hostage. And I mean, I'm not saying that.
Yeah. Rioting
I'm not
is not the
justifying
answer. Correct.
what they did, but at the same time, it could have been prevented.
Facts.
You know what I mean? Like, and I, you know, of course I wasn't there, so I don't know exactly.
So was force used?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, you got over 100 inmates.
What was the Code 3 riot called?
Yeah, Code 3 riot was called.
Was there staff being assaulted?
Yep. You got staff being assaulted, staff got injured, all behind the management making bad decisions.
Now, as a result of this riot, did staff members get, illegally moved to other institutions?
Yeah. And you know what's crazy?
Involuntary move
to other prisons, and they all happen to be Hispanic.
Whoa,
Out of
that's
over 100 officers of different races.
That's weird.
And you only select, I think it was like 6 or 7 or 8 or whatever.
One, I believe, was a brand spanking new cop, from what I heard.
Yeah.
Poor
hey,
thing,
but you know what's crazy? They were selected. They weren't
correct. Handpicked.
They were handpicked, right?
By from what I believe, the associate director.
Yeah.
From what I heard.
From FOPS. What does somebody from FOPS have anything to do with selecting
agendas?
Exactly.
Disgusting.
And then on top of that, the weird thing is one of those officers happened to be running for the president at that chapter. And so it makes you think, what, could that president at that time
did he have
a say in that move? Like
100%. Game of Thrones. You ever seen Game of Thrones? It's very politically and very cutthroat, similar to moves like that.
Yeah. But
here's the kicker. Please tell me the female inmates got held accountable, and please tell me that they did not have a day of therapy or a day of peace. What was it? A day of recovery?
Well, let me go back. So the very next day, the warden sends out a memo, or not even a memo, like an email addressing, hey, commending all
the responding staff that utilized force.
Yes, exactly.
I seen that email.
Hey, good job, blah, blah, blah. All this stuff, giving them, credit because it was definitely due, because that's a crazy situation. And then next thing you know, these officers are uprooted, transferred out, no inmate. I don't even know if any inmates went to ADSEG, maybe for a day or two, then to add insult to injury, then the next day or 2 days later, they have a day of healing for the inmates in the gym. Not even like, hey, are these officers okay? Or,
A day of healing.
Not
Okay.
not holding them
Was there
accountable.
anybody? Was there a fly on the wall in there? Did anybody know what happened in there? Like, were they
No.
talking about?
No.
What did they
because-
provide?
Because
Did they provide a therapist?
I don't even know. It was more about like, let's go ahead and make sure that you guys, let's make this a safe space for you guys, because you guys were traumatized, and officers were not in there because the officers traumatized them. You know what I mean? So we have to keep the officers away.
This is California. This is fucking California in a nutshell. Like right now, 2025. Right now, that's not all Californians, because you and I are not down with that type of mentality.
Right.
But that is California politics at its fucking finest.
Right. And the sad thing is that all those inmates that battered officers, or that obstructed and that incited,
Correct.
all that stuff, all their write-ups
Disappeared.
disappeared.
Dismissed. RVRs got
Dismissed, yeah.
dismissed. But I guarantee you this. I guarantee all the cops that used force got put under investigation.
Oh yeah. Yep. Yep.
And then people wonder, why is it so bad to be a CO?
Yeah.
Or why there's a high turnaround rate, or why people are just outright quitting now, or why a lot of people are on workman's comp,
Exactly.
or you know what I mean? But it's so fucking stupid.
And then that's why it goes back to the culture of, like I said, being lazy. Well, why are they lazy? Well, because when they do their job and do what they're supposed to do, you punish them, And it's like, you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't,
That's a
And
fact.
that doesn't justify you if you see your partner getting battered or assaulted, you better jump in and do something.
So basically, yeah. And I mean, would you agree with this statement? Hey, if you're currently a CO and you got fucking shitload of time, just go to work, mind your business. When you see your partner get his ass kicked, jump in. Period.
Yeah.
Right?
You got to jump in.
That's what it boils down to, right? I mean, no more trying to fucking save the day, solve crime, fucking try to find dope.
Yeah, I mean, you're just there to just show up and get your paycheck. You're
It's
you're
hot
not-
potato. You're there to make sure the bomb doesn't explode on your shift.
Exactly. And it hasn't stopped since that riot happened. The incidents on the inmates assaulting staff has skyrocketed. It was like, okay, the very little control that the prison had of the inmates, or the officers had of the inmates, it disappeared after that riot. I'm hearing like the inmates are saying, "Whoa, you can't do nothing. What are you gonna do?"
Absolutely.
They're legit spitting in officers' faces. Like, what? What are you gonna do? Nothing happens to them. And this is not coming from level 1s and 2 inmates. This is coming from level 3s and 4s, because those inmates have nothing to lose. They don't care.
If you could wave a magic wand, or if they were to put you in charge of a female institution, what are some changes you would make?
Well, right off the bat, I would transfer those level 3s and 4s out.
But where would you transfer them to?
I would transfer them to a prison that can accommodate like a 180 design building where you could segregate.
So what you're saying is the design of CCWF is not enough to be able to house
Yes.
violent level 3 and level 4 female inmates.
Exactly. Well, just put things into perspective. And it's not even enough too sometimes, because they ended up putting, like I said, they like to mess things up. So they put all the C over C inmates back to reception into, I believe it's a 180 design building. Since they put them in that building, they've been having code 2s, code 3s in that building because they don't want to be in there. They're resisting.
Mm-hmm.
And then the one officer that was able to kind of control that, they move them out because the inmates are not happy with them.
So when CDCR posts on their website, cancer walk at CCWF, or playing sports at CCWF? Like, what is that? Is that reflecting of actually what's transpiring inside of CCWF?
No, of course not. There is no, kumbaya.
There is no kumbaya
There's no
in reality?
kumbaya. In reality, no.
And I mean, you're the source. You're
Well,
there.
listen, they had to put things in perspectives, they had where they tried to, what they call like, bridge the gap between officers or staff, but mostly officers and inmates, right? They had a whole thing on the main yard. And the only people that showed up was probably just the people that worked on the yard. And this was all voluntary, right? Officers, hey, come out, have some food with the inmates, have some, let's whatever. Do you think anybody showed up? No. Only people that showed up were all the freaking brown nosers. That's
Peter
it.
Puffers.
Yeah. Or the people, that had to be there. Hey, I'm working the yard, so I got to be there. But voluntarily to go there, no. So that, if that doesn't show you, like, hey, that gap is just, it's so huge that the only way to fix it is.
What advice do you have for COs? I mean, you have so much experience. What advice do you have?
I definitely, you're talking about as far as the ones that are there right now?
That
the
are
ones
like you're a 24-year-old, 25-year-old, maybe 26-year-old.
You just started?
You got 1, 2, 3, 4 years in. What the hell is the advice? Reality. We no longer work for the department. We're not bound by policy. What would you authentically tell them?
Well, I will put it this way. I will never, ever tell an officer or anybody to apply. Because to me, I feel like that would be like me saying, go walk in fire. You know what I mean? Like, I would not tell somebody to go walk in fire, and I'm not going to tell somebody to go apply for the department. But obviously, if you're already there and you're in it, I would take some serious reevaluation of where you want to be in life. And because people are pretty much being made to put their morals and their ethics
facts.
You know what I mean? Like, you're at this point, it's like
it's no longer about policy and procedure.
Yeah.
It's now a fucking moral and spiritual battle.
Yes, exactly. And you brought it up right there. That's a good point. It's a spiritual battle. Go find God. Honestly, go build a relationship with God.
Right.
And honestly, once I started doing that, I left the department, and I didn't leave it. I retired because I got injured.
Yeah.
And honestly, it was the biggest blessing now for me that happened because.
And you bring up a good point. Not only, God, but utilize your resources. There's EAP, there's peer support, there's you have insurance. You definitely have insurance. Contact you for mental health services, get physically fit, eat healthy.
Yes.
Don't drink with your partners.
Yeah. Watch your circle,
Right.
Don't think that you could just, don't go out and party and do all this crazy stuff like people are doing.
Blow your money. Don't save. You know what I mean? Like these are all traps.
Yes. Live within your means. I learned that the hard way, and it's like, you really have to be strategic about how you want to move forward, because at any moment, if you are caught up in an incident, your job could be gone, or.
And how many times have we seen that?
A lot of times.
I remember I told my mom one time, Mom, they're firing people for no reason. She's like, no, Hector, they don't fire people for no reason.
Oh, yeah. You're collateral damage. That's really what you are, because it's like, hey, they were there. We're going to go ahead and fire that person so that way I could go ahead and promote to captain. Or
to leave no loose ends. You're right.
Yeah, and
oh my God.
And it's sad because it shouldn't be like that. It should just be, you know what? This is what happened. This is facts. And that's it. Like, let's go ahead and take care of the officer who just, like in the male prison. It's coming to the women's prison too, because we got them in there. And these women are violent. People don't realize that they are violent. You know, they have weapons too, And so it's like,
They get down crazy though, man. They'll slice your face or throw boiling water on you. They're fucking vicious.
Yes, they are vicious, and people don't realize that. But I think if you're there right now, if you're an officer right now and you want to stay there, you know, you have to think about, is that prison right for you? Do you want to promote? Especially if you have like a couple or a few years in, think about promotion, you know, promotion. Absolutely. Think of other things that you could do, you know, because being an officer stuck as an officer is not the only.
Correct. There's other avenues.
There's other avenues.
And I mean, ultimately, even if you have 2 years as an officer, promote to sergeant, because you probably have that mentality to be able to make those changes.
Yeah.
And a good heart and a good head on your shoulders.
Yes. And see, this is another thing I want to talk about is, as a female officer, we are like constantly judged. You know, we're judged as far as if we're, you know, lazy or we're too, like my husband would call it Karen. You're like, you're a Karen, you know? And it's basically just officers enforcing the rules, you know? And it's like, we're judged no matter what we do.
Right.
So just be yourself. Be yourself. Don't worry about, in other words, people are going to judge you no matter what,
100%.
Especially if you're a female. You know, like when I was working, I didn't wear makeup. I didn't care. I wore a hat, didn't put on any makeup, especially because if I was going to get sprayed in the face, I didn't want to worry about that.
I didn't think about that.
Because that did happen to me. But I wasn't wearing makeup, so it didn't matter, you know. And I got, you know, the powder from the blast. You know, wear clothing underneath your uniform, you know, just
those are all freaking key.
Things.
Those are all key points right there that I never even considered.
Yeah, because twice we had an accidental discharge from a blast, OC blast, and the powder got all over the place. And for whatever reason, because it was just like the pepper or whatever, it was OC, so it didn't really affect me. So I was able to clean that whole program office, and it didn't affect me at all.
Oh.
But it got all over my clothes, you know, and I'm going home. I don't want to bring those clothes to
Now you got to take it off before you go to the pad, put it in a bag.
Yeah, I always had shorts and another T-shirt underneath. So you know, and that's the thing. It sucks because we have to wear extra layers. You know, it's hot and whatever. But I would, you know, just be who you are. You don't have to, you know, don't please anybody. You know, don't degrade, or how do you say? Don't change for somebody else. You know what I mean? Like, just to get a job, just to whatever, because you're irreplaceable. As soon as
that new academy class shows up, you're gonna be
the new booties come on and the cuter or whatever,
younger,
and they don't know any better, and they're gonna be like, whatever you want, I got you. You 100%. Know, and it's like you're just remember that, you know. As soon as I was able to bid, I bid, you know.
Yeah. And
then, you know, a couple of years later, I had a female sergeant. I highly respected her, and she's like, come work for me on the yard. And I was like, cool. For a female, no problem. She ended up retiring, and then a male came in, but I was like, I'm going to be leaving soon anyways. But
yeah. Wow, man, we covered so much in this episode. I want to bring you back to do a part 2.
Really?
Because there's so much. I mean, dang, we just got into we unpacked a lot.
Yeah,
truth.
There is a lot more definitely to talk about.
For sure.
Yeah.
No, for sure. Like, I really enjoyed our time here, and thank you for making that drive down.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Thank you. And I do want to say on record, you are making an impact. Maybe, you know, nobody's telling you, I'm not sure, but you are making an impact out there. And for the people out there, I would say to go get his book.
Oh, cool.
That book is awesome.
Thank you.
Operational Recall, right?
Yeah, Operation Yard Recall.
Yard Recall, that's right.
Appreciate it.
Awesome
on Amazon.
book. Please go get it, especially if you are a cadet. But I mean, I don't work there anymore, and I was like, oh, this is good stuff.
It's informative.
It's very informative for whether you're a seasoned officer or just starting.
I appreciate that. So once again, thank you. And you'll be back for sure.
Yes.
Cool. There you guys have it, man. I told you I was going to do it. Another banger for you guys. If you like what you saw, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Love you. Keep pushing forward.
Unhinged mind, Hector's legend engraved. Living life raw, never been tamed.